What is up, everybody? Today we're going to be reviewing Punk Hazard for this episode of the One Piece vlog, so let's get right in. So we're finally to the second arc in post-time skip One Piece, which leads us to Punk Hazard. And going into this arc, we're really getting to the point where I have no idea where the story is going to go. And so leaving off from my Fishman Island review, one of the things I was most excited about was at the end of that arc, it felt like momentum was really springing us into the new world, really. And it felt like for the first time that Luffy was actually going to be doing things that has major consequences, and that he could actually compete with some of the biggest pirates in the world instead of just like a warlord here and like someone like Smoker early on. So I really enjoyed the kind of thinking about what was going to happen next when I finished Fishman Island, and really Punk Hazard did not disappoint. The first thing that I really enjoyed right before they get to Punk Hazard is seeing them actually enter the new world. That was a really cool moment where they're finally on the sea. He's sharing the same sea that Shanks has been on, and it's just this really like profound moment that even though they trained for 2 years and they've gotten a lot stronger, all of a sudden they're actually onto the new world, and it feels like the moment we've kind of been waiting for to say like, yes, they're real players. Luffy and the Straw Hats have a real chance to get the One Piece. And then leading into Punk Hazard, and kind of the call that was that they receive someone who needs help, it kind of really gives off this really mysterious vibe, and I kind of liked that for the first half of Punk Hazard. I liked how, it was kind of easy to figure out that was the location that Sakazuki and Aokiji fought out, because half of it was ice, half of it was on fire. But that's kind of a really cool concept, and unraveling the mystery of Punk Hazard from the incident years ago that Caesar caused, up to 2 years ago with the big battle that's made it this kind of almost unlivable place, I thought was really interesting. And of course you get the reintroduction of Smoker and the reintroduction of Law, and both of them I think fit the story really well. I really like how they have evolved. I mean, Law, I didn't really know a lot about him. It's really cool to see that Law actually wants to take down an emperor, and so when you see the thing with Big Mom, all of a sudden it's like, well, Law also wants to take down an emperor, and this new generation of pirates is actually strong enough, most likely strong enough to do so with a lot of help probably, which is really cool to see. I like Law's power, getting to unravel more of it, and the room and the operating room that he creates is super unique. I would have that's another ability that One Piece has so many unique abilities and so many standard abilities. When you go from the flame fruit with Ace and just fire, to rubber being also really unique, but it seems normal now that I've read 700 chapters of One Piece. But then seeing something like where you create an operating room and you can basically lock and literally almost do anything within that room and chop people up and things like that, was cool to kind of get an explanation to how he was just holding a guy's head, at Sabaody Archipelago, but also just a really unique power. Another example of the only other really kind of shonen that rivals, I think, Oda in storytelling and using unique powers like this is really Hunter x Hunter, in my opinion. Some come close, but nothing really applies such a wide variety of powers in such a unique way. And so that's just another thing for Law. I really want to know what more of his plan is. How is he going to beat Kaido? And also, what is his relationship with Flamingo? Doflamingo's introduction and how he's like on a phone call, but he's getting attacked and he's super calm, shows just like how strong I really think he is. I feel like he might not be on the level of an emperor, but he probably is just right behind that. He seems like he's insane. And at the end of the arc, like when he's just like flying, like I don't even know what's going on there. I don't really know anything about his power. So like, how did he get across the water? Like a really scary but cool mystery leading into Dressrosa. But Law, I think, was a great addition. I really want to learn more about him. I really like his power. I'm super hyped that he has an alliance with Luffy and the Straw Hats, and I think that is going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. I want to learn more about his plan. How is he actually going to be able to take down an emperor, and just kind of learning more about his backstory. Like, who is Law? Because I don't really know still. We're getting a little bit more into it. So he was really interesting. I think Caesar was a decent villain. Definitely one of the more throwaway villains I think that I've had. And it feels like Caesar's more of just a build-up to Flamingo and Kato later, in later arcs in Dressrosa and Wano. And I think one of the really interesting questions that comes out of this arc and with Caesar, of course, comes with the drugs that Caesar has been feeding these kids. Definitely applying to, the idea of drugs being, used by a political system to like subdue its citizens, something that I think we've definitely seen in America used quite often. So that was a really interesting kind of take on it. And from Oda, I think, and continuing that idea of the exploration of racism in Fishman Island to now the exploration of like someone giving a person something that's addictive, and that can really end up ruining, potentially ruining these kids' lives. Of course, they're on the path to dying if they were to keep taking these drugs. And it also gives you some really great emotional moments with Nami stepping up and saying, hey, we have to save these kids. It doesn't matter, what our main objective is. Our main objective is to save these people. It should always be to save people, even though they're pirates. And, Caesar, I think, as much of a throwaway villain and kind of a setup villain Caesar is in this little arc, that kind of concept I think was really interesting, and one of the things that kind of held up Punk Hazard to be able to compete with some of these other arcs, because you have a really cool setting, and you have a lot of big players that we've never really interacted before, but we've seen them a little bit in Law and Flamingo, which sets up this cool setting, but it all kind of feels like Punk Hazard is just this big setup for Dressrosa that's coming up next. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing about Punk Hazard, but it definitely kind of held back the arc for me. Like, a lot of when I was reading was me thinking, man, I can't wait to learn more about Law and Flamingo's relationship, or I can't wait to just see the next island they go on to because I want to see more of Law's plan. So this arc felt far more like a setup than its own contained story, right? Like when you compare it to something like Fishman Island, even though Fishman Island feels like it was just a little return to form for One Piece, getting the Straw Hats back together, seeing how strong they were, there was, the island had its own story. That's the same case with Punk Hazard, but Punk Hazard kind of leads you in it. There's still a lot of loose ends. So it doesn't even feel like it's its own story, but just like act one of this grand second and third act that we're about to be getting when they're traveling to Dressrosa. So overall, I think Punk Hazard, if I had to rate it out of 10, in the hierarchy of other arcs, just because it doesn't tie up all the loose ends and feels like it's in service of another arc, I would probably give it like a 7 out of 10, which is still really good. I enjoy all of the people that were introduced. I think the island is really interesting, but I wanted more out of it. Caesar was just okay, and I think in context of whenever I finish Dressrosa, that could change my opinion on Punk Hazard. Just, the more I read through it, I might get a bigger appreciation for it, but I'm kind of curious to see, what did you guys think of Punk Hazard? I think it's a pretty solid kind of a filler. I mean, it's obviously not filler, but it kind of fills the gap between this big arc that I think we're about to be going on. So yeah, what are your guys' thoughts on Punk Hazard? Did you want more from Caesar kind of when you read it, or do you think it really flows well into Dressrosa? Because the biggest thing that it's done for me is, especially at the end of Punk Hazard, it just got me really hyped to keep reading, because I was like, I want to get to all of these answers. I want to see what Dressrosa is about. I want to know what happened, you know, years ago between Law and Flamingo. I want to know how all these relationships are playing out, and I really just want to see Luffy and Law and the Straw Hats just interact more, because I think it'll be really funny, because Law is such a unique personality with the crew, and I want to learn more about, you know, how the world is set up. Also, I was right. They mention right at the end of the arc, they mention the new warlords, and Buggy is a warlord. That is insane. I just saw an image of it, so there's just like, you know, the one image of when they're talking about, you know, I'm just kind of gotten into the plan of Law, and they're just kind of moving on to Dressrosa right now. But the fact that, yeah, that Buggy is a warlord, I kind of said that jokingly, but, you know, he was a character that seemed like, I guess he was in play. It probably makes a lot of sense because of the huge following that he's gained. He's going to be able to crush any rookie, even if he isn't as strong as them. He has enough subordinates that are. So that's pretty cool that Buggy is a warlord. I want to see more of him, because he's just slowly becoming one of my favorite characters in One Piece, and I haven't even read about him for like, what is it, like 100 chapters, maybe something close to that. So yeah, that was cool, and that was really satisfying to see. I want to see who the new two admirals are. I want to see kind of if their philosophies differ with that of Sakazuki. And also at the end of Punk Hazard, when Aokiji shows back up, another cool moment where he's just kind of traveling around. I don't know what he's doing, and it's just kind of like, I think the theme for Punk Hazard is kind of just a big setup for how the structure of the new world is, introducing us to more characters. Obviously, there's the other alliance with Kid and the other two rookies, so I'm curious to see how does that play out, and how strong are some of the other rookies compared to Luffy and Law, because obviously Law is insanely strong. I don't know if he's as strong as, like, he's clearly probably not going to be strong enough to just take down Kaido on his own, but I think Law is incredibly strong, and I want to see if more, you know, how strong are these rookies in comparison to Luffy, and I want to see Luffy pushed to his limits more. So I thought there was a lot of cool moments. Everything with the drug abuse, I think, was an interesting thematic element to Punk Hazard, but it does just kind of feel like a filler or a setup. So my opinion could change on it very well into, you know, when I finish Dressrosa eventually. And kind of just seeing how it all plays out, I might think this is just a brilliant setup. But for right now, I think it's really good. It's got me very excited at the very least. I did want a little more from the self-contained story of Punk Hazard. But yeah, I'm just really looking forward to see what Flamingo has. Everything I've ever heard about him is that he's one of the greatest characters in One Piece. His design's amazing, and he's really terrifying right now. He's definitely is on kind of that Kuma level when Kuma was first introduced, where Kuma was this really, really scary figure. Everything he did was Zoro, and then everything at Sabaody Archipelago, and then kind of seeing Flamingo at the war, and then now seeing him interact with Law, and just kind of his demeanor and everything is really intimidating. So yeah, that's my review of Punk Hazard. It really just has gotten me excited to continue One Piece, as I feel every arc has done for me so far. So let me know your thoughts down below. What did you think of Punk Hazard, and do you think it's a good lead up into Dressrosa? Obviously no spoilers yet, because I'm just getting there, but you know, do you think it connects better? Do you think it makes it better or worse? You also interact with me on Twitter at ArtEssays. That's a great place to see me. Make sure to subscribe and do everything like that. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.